Hello, Read, Write, Publish. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Dr. Norman, and I'm the educational technology coach here in the high school. My office is located in H308, and so some of the topics that I'm going to present to you today and some of the platforms I'm going to show you today and equipment, you can all come down to H308 if you want some more information or if you want to check out some equipment. So, I'm here today because we're talking about how to choose the best project format and to look at some of the equipment that we have to offer so that you can make the best decision for yourself. So, as we go through this, I just want you to try and keep these two questions in the back of your mind. And that is, what kind of story are you trying to tell? And that's going to help you pick the best format for your particular project. And then some of the choices that you're going to make on how you're going to put this project together is going to be influenced by who your audience is. So just keep these two questions always in the back of your mind based on some of the things that I'm going to present to you today. All right, so this is the actual directions for your project, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And it says, using tools applicable to film and or website design, you're going to plan, produce, revise, and turn in either a 30-second to 1.5-minute public service announcement, an advertisement for a product, or a print campaign. And then alternatively, you can produce a website for a real or fictitious product or service. So, for whatever you are advertising, you're going to keep a couple of things in mind, and that's how the content that you put inside your project influences the delivery form that you choose, or how the delivery form influences the content. And so we'll go through a couple of different types of things that you should consider, and then look at some advertisements on top of that. All right, so let's dive deep just a little bit into some of the things that we have in our office that you might consider. So let's take into consideration a film project. So you're obviously going to need a camera, you're probably going to need a microphone, a tripod, and then possibly a green screen. And so I think for the camera, the best option is just to use your phone. So these phones that we have today, some of the cameras that are on here are extremely high quality. The only thing that you may be missing is a microphone. And so the microphone that I have here on the screen on the left-hand side, that's actually something that can be plugged in. So with the new iPhones, you're going to need the little dongle that goes with it so that you can have an external microphone to pick up the sound a little bit better. Alternatively, we have a Rode mic that you can plug in a transmitter to, and it actually can be wireless. So the thing about microphones that you need to keep in mind is it needs to be close to your voice. So the closer it is to your voice, the better the sound is going to be. So there's nothing worse than looking at a film project when you can't distinguish what the person is saying, or there's so much external noise that you can't hear. So just keep in mind that you're trying to eliminate all background sounds as best as you can. And what some people don't take into consideration is that ceiling fans and or standing fans along with air conditioning units can be picked up on that microphone. So you just want to be aware of your surroundings. The closer the microphone is to your voice or your mouth, the better the sound's going to be. You're going to need a tripod, and specifically you're going to need the apparatus that goes on top of the tripod to hold your cell phone. So we just call them the cell phone clips. And then you might want to think about what's in your background. And so the easiest way to do that is with the green screen. Now, we have these portable green screens. We actually have 2 of them, and they actually fold up as small as the circle that's down in the bottom right-hand corner here. And they're really easy to transport. The other thing that you need to probably keep in mind is lighting. And so we do have a set of portable lights like what you see here on the right-hand side. And so when you do set up the lighting particular situation, you want to make sure that the background is lit up, but you also want to make sure the subject. And if you're the subject, then you want to make sure that the light is on you. Alternatively, if you don't want to set up a lighting system such as this, then you want to make sure that you're filming outdoors. The best time to film is early in the morning or late in the evening. So probably before 8 a.m. or between like 8 and 9 a.m. And then after 4 p.m. is usually the best time to film with lighting, with natural lighting. All right, part of your assignment is you actually need to plan. And so there is storyboard creators out there, or there's actually storyboard software and templates that you can borrow. These two just happen to come from Canva. And so what you can do is you can actually download these and you can fill them in. So some of the types of things that you're going to be filling in here is an actual plan. What is going to be in the scene? What does it look like? What does the background look like? How long is it going to be? What are the props that need to be in there? Is it going to be any spoken words? And so therefore, what's the narration? What type of character is going to be in there? Is there going to be any movement? And so this is your storyboard, and this is your time to create and pre-plan those particular shots that you would like to include in either your public service announcement or your actual film. Now, the other alternative to this is Google Docs works just as well. So if you just want to recreate these different types of placeholders that you have in either one of these templates, then by all means just use a Google Doc. Okay, but you do need to do some sort of storyboard, or you need to do some sort of pre-planning. All right, when you do get ready to film, some of the things that people have found to be really, really helpful is called qprompter.com. So if you do have a script, what you can do is you can upload that script into this web browser, this web page. You can play with some of the parameters that are on there, and then you can set it to scroll. And as it's scrolling, you can read right from the screen. So what you would do is you would set your computer up really close to the camera so that you can see you can see your computer, but at the same time it looks like you're looking at the lens of your camera. And so what you'll see is a lot of like people on the news who use teleprompters. Anybody that needs to read a script, you'll see our politicians doing that. So they're actually reading off of a teleprompter so that they don't have to memorize their speeches. Okay, I still suggest that you do practice any type of dialogue that you're going to have, but just know that the qprompter.com can actually help you with that. All right, so now let's get into some of the frameworks of what an actual PSA is, what's included in a website, and so forth. So if you are going to choose a PSA, this is kind of the framework that goes behind a PSA. Usually a PSA, a public service announcement, is about 30 seconds to a minute and a half. And it takes into consideration is who, what, where, why, and when. So if you can answer all 5 of those, then you've got a pretty good PSA. You need to consider your audience, and through your research, it should guide you into answering those 5 W's, along with understanding who your audience should be. All right? Go back to the storyboard and plan it out. Plan out each, section, each second of what is going to enhance your project. You need a hook. So how are you going to hook your audience in within like the first 7 seconds? Are you going to do it by asking a question? Are you going to drop a shocking statistic? So what is your hook to capture the attention of your audience? A PSA usually has 5 to 7 actual speaking lines or scenes, and in some cases it doesn't even have any. And so you are just really relying on the acting skills or the text that comes across on the screen. But typically, if you are going to have an actor, it's actually 5 to 7 speaking lines and or words that come up on the screen. And then the final piece to a PSA is you have something called call to action. You're asking your audience to do something. You're asking them to participate. Or it can be a shareable, like you have a campaign, and so you want them to share a hashtag, or there's a slogan that you would like to have go viral. But it always involves a call to action, right, from your audience members. What are you asking them to do? And that's typically what the framework of a public service announcement would look like. If you're going to choose a website, there's 5 different types of, or 5 different I shouldn't call it, it's just 5 different companies that you could possibly go to. So we have Wix.com, Weebly.com, and Squarespace.com. The other 2 would be WordPress and then Google Sites. So what I've done is I have just kind of condensed some of the information as to maybe the pros and cons of each one of these. And so you're going to have to do a deep dive into which one's going to work for you. Some are free, some are not. Most times you can create free, but when it comes time to publish, that's where it's going to cost you some money. So I do caution you on that, just to look and do a deep dive before you select one of these 3 websites along with WordPress. Even though WordPress is free, it's when you go to publish is when you're going to have a hard time. So everybody has access to Google Sites. Everybody can create a website with Google Sites. Everybody can publish free from Google Sites. It will just publish straight from your Google Drive. So if you want to create a website, you can select one of those and, just do a deeper dive into which platform is going to work best for you. All right, so some things to keep in mind for a website. So the framework for that is kind of like the first 2 go with your research, which is listed as number 5, where you're going to storyboard, you're going to plan, and you're going to research. But through your research, you should understand and know what your overall message is going to be. What is your deliverable? And hopefully that will support your why. Why am I creating this website? Why is it the best mode to choose to deliver my overall message? So if you go back to those first 2 guiding questions that I was asking you about, and then redirect yourself back to what the purpose of the assignment is, know your why. Why am I putting this together? And then once you have those 2, and you've got your storyboard and you have your plan and you've got your research, basically the framework is going to have about 5 pages. And so customarily, these are the 5 pages that go with just about every single website. So you have the home or the landing page, which typically is just a couple of lines on the website or on that home page, that very first page. And usually it contains some sort of graphic or image, right? And so you're really kind of hooking your audience in again with what is going to be on that home page. Usually have an about page. So it's either about us, it's about me as the owner, or it's about the business. It could be about the product, either fictitious or real. You're going to have a services page. What kind of services are you going to have to offer? What is this product about? Then typically you would probably have FAQs, frequently asked questions about the product or about the business. And then you're probably going to have a contact page, all right? And then the last thing is, once you've decided in your storyboard and your plan, like what kind of text is going to go on the screen, then hopefully that imagery that your words kind of produce, that should guide you to the type of multimedia that you would like to have on your web page. So that's why it says use multimedia with purpose. Don't just try to go out and pick any old thing to put on a web page. You've got to be very, very selective with your multimedia that you put on there, whether you choose an image, whether you choose simple graphics like I have here over on the left-hand side, or are you going to go with still images? Okay, so choose your multimedia with purpose. All right, so speaking of images, you need to have high quality images. You cannot use any images that are pixelated. That means that as you put something on the screen, if you go to increase the size, it gets very, very grainy. Then you know that you do not have a high quality image. When you resize graphics, they should hold their composition. And so a couple of free websites where you can go out and get high quality images are here on the left hand or on the right hand side. I personally like unsplash.com, and so a lot of the images that I am using here in this presentation do come from Unsplash. Be aware that I do believe Shutterstock and Unsplash have merged into the same company. So when you open up Unsplash, a lot of the images that are in there right now towards the bottom of the screen are no longer free. They're no longer copyright free. So make sure that you are analyzing the images that you'd like, but you really shouldn't have to pay for any images. So try out pexels.com and pixabay.com. And definitely go in and check out these 4 websites for those copyright-free, high-quality images. And don't be afraid to use black and white photos. Okay, don't be afraid, especially if black and white is going to enhance your product or enhance your message. And so when we get into some examples in here in a few minutes, you're going to see black and white imagery and how that enhances the message, whether it be a positive message or whether it be a negative message. You're going to see how black and white photos enhance that message. All right, so sounds. So kind of along the lines of high quality images, you need to think about high quality sounds. And so with GarageBand, everybody that's running a Mac computer, you have access to GarageBand and you can actually create your own sound loops. And so I would strongly encourage, if that's of interest to you, to go out and search for a tutorial on YouTube for GarageBand, and you'll see how really easy it is to drag and drop clips, loop clips, sound clips into the platform and create your own loops. Along with that, if you're not into creating your own sounds for effect on either your website or in your PSA for background music, or just on your images that you possibly create, you have, by all means, you don't have to do this, but just know that these are available. But these are royalty-free music as well. So Epic Sound, royalty-free music, Creative Commons music. You can come in and get, full-length instrumental pieces, full-length sounds, and then obviously sound clips if you're looking for a specific sound to be able to use. Raindrops, explosions, you name it, a laugh. You'll be able to find it on these particular websites. Okay, I'm going to pause for 1 minute just so that you can digest the information that I've presented. And so I've talked about the 3 different areas for your project, along with some of the equipment that might go with it, along with some of the platforms. So I'll just pause and let you digest that information. Okay, great. So, welcome back. Where we want to go and direct our attention now is the actual design. And so we have a couple of objects here, and I'm going to go ahead and light all of this up. And this is called the 4 principles of design. And so if you're designing from scratch, you want to keep these 4 principles in into consideration. If you're going to use any of the platforms that I've already discussed, those platforms come with what's called templates. And so the templates are already pre-made or pre-designed that take these 4 principles into consideration. For example, Google Slides. You can choose a template or you can choose a theme, and it will bring in all the colors and the slide designs for you. And it will take these 4 principles into consideration. And so once you choose that theme or once you choose that template, more than likely you're not going to want to mess with the colors, and you're not going to mess with the different styles of where they have placed things on the screen, because they've taken these 4 principles of design into consideration. So I'll just draw to your attention, there's 2 ways that this is presented. So the first way is in the upper right-hand corner of each rectangle, you see the word carp that is vertically. And so each letter that is in yellow spells out the word carp. And then you can see that if it's C, it's going with contrast. If it's A, it's with alignment. If it's R, it's with repetition. And P is proximity. And so these are all the principles that take into consideration of how to make something that is pleasing to the eye for the audience member. So again, go back and figure out who your audience is while you're in the middle of designing your storyboard. So the first one is contrast, and we're really going to do a deep dive into this later, but contrast is talking about your color choices, the size of your fonts, and then where you're actually placing different shapes on the screen. So circles are all in the bottom left-hand corner for this particular slide. They're all yellow, they're all outlined in black. It's using the same fish. Right? Why is it using the same fish? Because it's taking into consideration and sharing with the audience that if you don't take these design principles into consideration when you are creating, you're actually going to come up with a bad design. It might smell. It's going to look bad. It's going to be a dead carp. All right? And dead carps smell and look bad, okay, as they decompose. And so that's kind of the message that's being sent to the audience at this moment. So color, size, the shape of the text, everything matters, right? And as we do a little bit deeper dive into font psychology and the rhyme and reason as to why you would select certain colors, it all goes back to who's your audience. For alignment, lining up the objects and the text. For example, on this presentation that I have, all titles are at the top, right? And all titles, they're not meant to confuse you as to what the theme of that particular slide is about. And so as we've gone through, all the titles of this presentation have all been at the top of each slide, right? In this particular slide, all of the first letters of the word carp, I've got it in 2 different places. First in the upper right-hand corner, and now in the bottom left-hand corner to spell it all out a little bit better. All right? And once you've figured out where that alignment's going to be, then you're going to stay with it and you're going to repeat it over and over and over again, because the last thing you want to do is trick your audience, and that's where you get repetition. Once you find a design that is working for you and works for the audience that you've selected, make sure you're repeating that pattern several different times throughout the presentation. So repetition matters. It's the same with reading in English, right? We read left to right. And so we're not going to typically put the text, large amounts of text, vertical, because that's not how we were trained to read. We were trained to read left to right, right? Same thing at the capital letter at the beginning of a sentence and ends with a period. That's how you were trained, and we repeat it over and over and over again in the book that we're reading. Capital letter begins a sentence. When I see a period, I drop my voice, I drop my thoughts so that I can pick up the next sentence. It's constantly repeated. Same thing with colors, same thing with spacing and shapes and fonts. Repeat them over and over again. All right, and the last one is proximity. How are you going to group the objects on the actual platform that you have? So in this particular case, we've got everything grouped kind of 4 different rectangles across the screen, we've got 4 circles that are really highlighting what each of the letters means. But then here it's also showing you different squares in the upper left-hand corner of how they can be grouped together, and then the different triangles of how they can be grouped together. So keep these 4 principles in mind: contrast, alignment, repetition, and proximity. And you'll be able to actually pick out some of these things on some of the examples we have coming up. All right, so do consider the final form of this project is going to be in a digital form. You should also consider your audience. Always keep your audience in mind when creating this presentation, because that's going to help you guide as you prepare the hook, and it's going to help you guide as you're going to actually present. So ask yourself, how will the content influence the delivery form, and how will the delivery form influence the content? All right, so in each case, always keep these design principles in mind: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. All right, so I alluded to this a little bit when we were talking about contrast. And so when you go to choose your fonts with purpose. So this little quote on the left-hand side, it says, every font has a unique personality and purpose. And this is why we keep honing in on you need to know what your audience is. And as you start planning and going through your storyboard and planning out your scenes and planning out, the different lines for your public service announcement, what emotion are you trying to get your audience to feel? So if you want them to feel strong or confident or stable, if you look at those words that are over there on the right-hand side, you'll see that right underneath there, it has a font family, okay? So if I want my audience members to look and see what I'm trying to present them, and I want them to feel stable, I would probably hone in on the font family sans serif, but specifically Helvetica Bold. If I want them to feel strong, I might go look at a font called Futura, right? If I want to be friendly and, to present myself in a friendly manner, I might look at Cooper. All right, you've got you've got script fonts, you've got modern fonts, you've got things for display. If I want things to be reliable or comfort or respectable. So every font has a unique personality and purpose. So select your fonts with purpose, and it's all based on the emotion that you want your audience to feel. All right, along the same lines is font colors. All right, so think of these as just categories of how they're kind of like put together and just sort of descriptors, all right? And so like the font psychology is actually taking it a little bit step further, and they're saying that these are masculine fonts, these are feminine fonts, and these are gender neutral fonts. And so instead of kind of putting them with different genders and saying, okay, my audience is mostly masculine, I'm going to use these fonts, or my audience is mostly females, I'm going to use this font. I would strongly suggest that you probably just look at these as categories and go back to the font psychology. Do I want my audience to feel strong? Do I want them to feel stable? And so you're going to use fonts that are like bold and sharp edges and straight lines. And so those would be your Oswald fonts, your Arvo, your Anton, and your Merriweather. So all of those fonts have like sharp edges and straight lines. Where if it's in the feminine font, it's more like category. It's like delicate, it's pretty, it's curvy, it's thin, it's elegant. So those are your script fonts. Those are your fonts that might have a little bit more space in between them to soften it up a little bit. So you'll see a couple of script fonts there. And then, fonts where you're just trying to not draw attention to anything. So put it into that like neutral category. And so that's your Roboto or your Garamond, I think it's Garamond. Times New Roman, super plain. We'll find that in Google Docs a lot. A lot of your Google Docs will start off with Times New Roman, or they'll start off with Arial or Open Sans. And so those are all different types of fonts that are just neutral. So you're not going to draw attention to anything. So really, what do you want? What's kind of your message? And go back to font psychology and say, okay, what's my message? It's going to have a personality and a purpose. And then maybe go into some of these categories. It's like, yeah, I want people to feel bold, straight lines. So look at that font family. I want people to feel elegant and feel, pretty or delicate. Then I would look at those particular fonts that are a little bit more scripty, or their letters are a little bit more curvy. Okay, and if I don't want to draw in attention to anybody, I might choose some more of these neutral fonts. All right, then after you've got your fonts in there, then you might want to think about what font colors are you going to use. So again, just using those categories of, the masculine colors, feminine colors, and your gender neutral colors. You've got more of the blues and the grays over in the masculine. You've got some reds and pinks and purples in the feminine colors. And then your gender neutrals not calling attention would be like your grays and your light browns, your light blues, your whites, and your blacks. If you want to kind of like go off the charts here of where these particular colors would lie, I would invite you to go to color.adobe.com. So you'll see that link down the bottom, and you'll be able to use this color wheel, and it will actually give you color families that go together. And so again, don't be afraid of like black and whites, but it'll give you some of those monotone colors. Or monochrome colors. And so you'll be able to spin this color wheel around and land on the 5 or 6 colors that you might, choose for your different project. But it takes the guesswork out of it. And it tells you exactly which colors are actually compatible with one another. It's a really good tool to use. Okay. So think about not only your font, what message does that send? Think about, the different types of fonts that go with that, along with what are your font color choices. Okay, and that's all going to wrap into who is your audience, thinking about that. All right, so we're going to pause and kind of take a different direction to sort of put those principles into practice. And so at your table group, we're going to do a couple of things. And so we're going to look at some images. And so there are 3 slides of images, and on each slide you're going to have 2 minutes to discuss each one of the table, each one of the images that pops up on the screen. You're going to have 2 minutes to talk to your table. And I want you to think about the following there on the right-hand side. What are the demographics? Who's the audience? What font choices did they use? What was probably the rhyme and reason behind those fonts? What font colors did they use? And then look at the contrast. Look at the alignment of the objects that are on the image. Look at the repeating text or repeating images or the placement for proximity. All right, so take into consideration those things when you look at these images. And then what story or message is being told? And who is the intended audience? Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to advance to the next screen, and a 2-minute timer is going to start. And you're going to have 2 minutes to talk about that particular image, to pick out the demographics, the font colors, contrast, alignment, repetition, proximity, and then answer these few questions here. What story is being told, and who's the attendant audience? The slide after that, you'll be able to have a class discussion to kind of come together. And so I'm going to roll through 3 different examples, and then I'll meet you on the other side. So here's the first one. Feel free to pause the video as you need to, but the first one's coming up along with the first 2-minute timer. Okay, hopefully that was enough time to have a conversation with your table. Now pause this video and have a class discussion. Okay, welcome back to your next set of images. Have a 2-minute conversation at your table. Again, hopefully that was enough time for your table to come up with some ideas on these 2 images. So pause the video for a class discussion and come back together and share your thoughts. Okay, welcome back. Here's the next 2 set of images. Have a 2-minute conversation with your table. Talk about the intended audience and some of the different types of imagery that you see. Okay, come back together. Pause this video for class discussion, kind of share with the class what your thoughts were, and I'll see you on the next set of slides. Excellent. So welcome back. I just want to finish up this presentation. And so it's just sort of a reminder to basically cite all of the sources that you have in your research, and specifically cite the sources of the images and or videos and sound that you may be borrowing from these free sites. So if it's not yours, you didn't create it, then you must cite it. And so over here on the right hand side, these are a couple of citation creators, but definitely use the information that your teachers are presenting because they'll give you the correct formats that they would like you to use. All right, so when you do go to Unsplash, one of the examples here on the left-hand side with this image, this is sort of the starter of a citation, so it's not in the correct format, but that's sort of the information that you'll be able to get with Unsplash. So you'll at least be able to get the author, and you'll be able to get the website for which it comes from. And then each of those images definitely has a name. So you'll be able to get quite a bit of information. The problem is that you want to be able to get the information as you grab it. So do keep a running list of your citations so that you can sort things out at the end. All right, so in conclusion, just kind of wrap it up. My friend Julian is a graphic designer, and so when I asked him, I said, hey, I've got to give this presentation. What would you consider to be one of the most important messages that I can leave with these young creators? Like, what's the most important thing? And I thought his advice was really, really good. So as you're creating, you want to be able to get feedback, because two of the questions that we asked you at the very beginning was always keep your audience in mind when you're creating. And so as you're creating, he says, don't be afraid to get and receive feedback from that targeted audience. So if you're trying to elicit a response, or if you are trying to elicit an emotion, and you know your audience, don't be afraid to go get feedback from them to see if that holds true. Do they get the emotion that you want them to have? So get the feedback that you need so that you can revise and replan so before the actual project is due. And then in the end, he says, when the project is complete, everything should look like it belongs. It needs to flow, be seen as one. And so again, another critical eye on your project, getting feedback is very, very crucial. So I leave you with that. I leave you with this presentation. I'm sure it will be posted up in Schoology for you to revisit. And just know that we're down in H308 if you want to come and check out equipment. Make sure you bring your school ID, because we'll need to collect that as you take the equipment. There are options to check things out for the weekend, specifically microphones and tripods, but I caution you, do not wait until the last minute because our supplies are limited. And so the quicker you start checking things out, the easier it will be on us to make sure that we have the equipment for you. All right, good luck to you, and I hope to connect with you soon.